The book of 1 Samuel opened with the account of a family that was faithful in their service and worship of God. Elkanah's wife Hannah asked for and received the blessing of a son whom she named Samuel. Hannah dedicated Samuel to lifelong service to God. When Samuel was weaned, Hannah brought him before the Lord at Shiloh, where he stayed with the high priest Eli and served before the Lord. 1 Samuel 2:11. Then Elkanah went to his house at Ramah, but the child ministered to the Lord before Eli the priest. This fact that Samuel served before the Lord is repeated twice in this section of Scripture for a total of 3 times. In between the first 2 statements of Samuel's faithful service in verses 11 through 18, there is a chiasm that contrasts Samuel with Eli's sons Hophni and Phineas. Hophni and Phineas are identified as sons of Belial. In between the second and third statements about Samuel serving the Lord, the Scriptures contrast the blessing on Elkanah's house with the curse on Eli's house. What does it mean to be a son of Belial? How did Hophni and Phineas defile their service to the Lord? What was the curse on the house of Eli? I'm Brenda Cathcart, and this is the Promise of Rest. The chiasm that starts this section of Scripture begins and ends with the statement that Samuel ministered before the Lord. This comprises the outer layer of the chiasm. The second layer is the declaration of the corruption and sinfulness of Hophni and Phineas, the sons of Eli. The middle layer details the ways Hophni and Phineas stole the offerings from the men who brought them and how they defiled God's portion of the offerings. Immediately after we are first told that the child Samuel ministered before the Lord, we learn that Eli's 2 sons, who served as priests in Shiloh, were sons of Belial. 1 Samuel 2:12. And the sons of Eli were sons of Belial. They did not know the Lord. The 2 sons of Eli did not know the Lord that they were supposed to be serving. They were the sons of Belial instead of sons of God. The Hebrew word is Belial, number 1100 in Strong's Concordance. It means worthless or without profit. It comes from 2 words, Beli, number 1097, which means failure, nothing, lacking, or without, and Yaal, number 3276, which means ascend, profit, or valuable. Literally, Belial means failure to ascend. When an offering is brought before the Lord, it is placed on the altar, and the smoke ascends to God, symbolically taking the one who brings the offering into the presence of God. Hophni and Phineas did not know the Lord. As a result, when they brought their own offerings to God, they symbolically failed to ascend into the presence of God. The first use of the term, sons of Belial, is when Moses warns the children of Israel about false prophets or about a brother that leads the congregation astray. Deuteronomy 13:12-15. If in one of your cities, which the Lord your God has given you to dwell in, you shall hear one saying, Men, the sons of Belial have gone out from among you and have drawn away those who live in their city, saying, Let us go and serve other gods, which you have not known. Then you shall inquire and make search and ask carefully, and behold, if it is true, and the thing is certain, that such an abomination is done among you, you shall surely strike those who live in that city with the edge of the sword, destroying it completely, and all that is in it, and all the cattle of it with the edge of the sword. The sons of Belial are those who would lead and encourage Israel to follow after other gods which they have not known. It seems that Hophni and Phineas, who don't know Yahovah, knew other gods. The punishment against these sons of Belial is harsh. Not only were they to be killed, but so was every inhabitant and all the livestock of the city in which they lived. The passage goes on to state that all of the plunder of that city was to be taken into the main street of the city and burned. Paul uses this term Belial as a title for Satan, contrasting those who belong to Belial with those who belong to Messiah. 2 Corinthians 6:14 and 15. Do not be unequally yoked together with unbelievers, for what fellowship has righteousness with lawlessness? And what communion has light with darkness? And what accord has Christ with Belial? Or what part has a believer with an unbeliever? The Zondervan NIV Study Bible comments on Paul's use of the name Belial. Later, this word, Belial in Hebrew, was used as a name for Satan, who is the personification of wickedness and lawlessness. According to Paul, those who belong to Belial are unbelievers, lawless, and in darkness. When Yeshua was casting out demons, the scribes accused Yeshua of being a son of Beelzebub, another name or title for Satan. Mark 3:22. And the scribes who came down from Jerusalem said, He has Beelzebub, and by the ruler of demons he casts out demons. Later in his ministry, Yeshua chastised the Pharisees after they tried to trap him into breaking Torah by presenting a woman to him for judgment that they said was caught in adultery. He went on to chastise them for not believing him. Yeshua began by stating that they didn't know either him or the Father. John 8:19. Then they said to him, Where is your Father? Jesus answered, You know neither me nor my Father. If you had known me, you would have known my Father also. These Pharisees were like Hophni and Phineas. They did not know the God that they said they served. Yeshua told the Pharisees that instead of being sons of Abraham, they were actually sons of their father, the devil. John 8:44. You are of your father the devil, and the desires of your father you want to do. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaks a lie, he speaks from his own resources, for he is a liar and the father of it. This rebuke is like Paul contrasting those who belong to Belial with those who belong to Messiah. Also, the sons of Belial are a type of Antichrist. Moses said that the sons of Belial went out from among them. The Apostle John warns against this same type of people, calling them antichrists. 1 John 2:18 and 19. Little children, it is the last time, and just as you have heard that Antichrist is coming, even now many antichrists have risen up, from which we know that it is the last hour. They went out from us, but they were not of us. For if they were of us, they would have continued with us. But they went out, so that it might be revealed that they were not all of us. John goes on to say that these antichrists deny the Father and the Son. In other words, they encourage worship of another God, and they do not know Yahovah, just like Hophni and Phineas. Another characteristic of the sons of Belial is revealed later in Deuteronomy. In that passage, Moses instructs the people that they are to give provisions to a poor man when he is released after serving his 7 years of servitude because of his debt. The word Belial is translated as wicked in this translation. Deuteronomy 15:9 and 10. Beware lest there be a wicked Belial thought in your heart, saying, The 7th year, the year of release, is at hand, and your eye be evil against your poor brother, and you give him nothing, and he cry out to the Lord against you, and it becomes sin among you. You shall surely give to him, and your heart should not be grieved when you give to him, because for this thing the Lord your God will bless you in all your works and in all to which you put your hand. Moses told Israel to guard against being uncaring towards a fellow Israelite, specifically one who had become poor and in need. The one who has wicked or worthless thoughts in his heart does not show love for his neighbor. This lack of love was more than evident in the Benjamite town of Gibeah, which behaved like Sodom in attacking a guest to their city. In Judges 19:22, the men of Gibeah are described as sons of Belial. Now, back to 1 Samuel and the sons of Eli, who were really sons of Belial. They demonstrated their lack of love for others by taking more than their share of the sacrifices brought to God. 1 Samuel 2:13 and 14. And the priest's custom with the people was that when any man offered a sacrifice, the priest's servant would come with a 3-pronged flesh hook in his hand while the meat was boiling. Then he would thrust it into the pan or kettle or cauldron or pot, and the priest would take for himself all that the flesh hook brought up. So they did in Shiloh to all the Israelites who came there. The Art Scroll Series commentary on 1 Samuel explains the practice of Hophni and Phineas in relation to what the Torah required. The word zebach, sacrifice, generally refers to a korban, shalmim, peace offering. After the designated parts are placed on the altar, the Cohen is awarded the breast and the right thigh, with the rest going to the owners of the offering. Leviticus 7:28-34. Eli's sons established a new practice, that their attendants would seize larger portions, thus depriving the owner of meat that was rightfully his. Rashi and Radak. Not only did Hophni and Phineas steal from the one who brought the offering, they defiled the sacrifice and dishonored God by trying to take their own portion before giving God his portion, and before it was boiled as was required by the Torah. 1 Samuel 2:15 and 16. Also, before they burned the fat, the priest's servant would come and say to the man who sacrificed, "Give meat for roasting to the priest, for he will not take boiled meat from you, but raw." And if the man said to him, "They should really burn the fat first, then you may take as much as your heart desires," he would then answer him, "No, but you must give it now, and if not, I will take it by force." The Art Scroll Series commentary identified the offering that Hophni and Phineas interfered with as a sacrifice of the peace offering. What is significant about them interfering with the peace offering? Although we call this a peace offering in English, the Hebrew description reveals that it is so much more. Leviticus 3:1. When his offering is a sacrifice of a peace offering, if he offers it of the herd, whether male or female, he shall offer it without blemish before the Lord. All of the offerings brought to the Lord are called just that, offerings. They are the burnt offering, the mincha offering, the sin offering, and the guilt offering. However, the peace offering is the only offering that is specifically called a sacrifice. As the Art Scroll commentary stated, the word zebach, or sacrifice, almost always refers to this particular offering. The word translated as peace is the Hebrew word shalem, number 8002, meaning a requital or voluntary sacrifice in thanks. This definition doesn't really tell us much. However, shalem is from the word shalom, number 7999, meaning to be safe, completed, full, finished, or perfect. This offering is a sacrifice to bring safety, completeness, fullness, and perfection to the one bringing the offering. Unlike any other offering, the one bringing the offering keeps a portion of his offering. He must eat it in the presence of God when he brings the offering. Anyone who is ritually pure may eat the offering with him. It is a shared meal with God, family, and friends. Finally, the Passover sacrifice was a type of sacrifice of peace. It has all of the elements of the peace offering, except that the lamb was roasted instead of being boiled. The Passover sacrifice brought safety, fullness, completeness, and perfection to the children of Israel. It brought them into covenant and fellowship with God. The Passover in Egypt foreshadowed Yeshua's sacrifice on the cross. Yeshua, our Passover sacrifice, brings us safety, completeness, and perfection. It brings us into fellowship with God, where we can enjoy a shared meal with Him and all our family and friends. This takes us to the central theme of the chiasm. Hophni and Phineas, as God's priests, were to be intermediaries between God and man. They were to facilitate bringing men into fellowship with God. Their actions defiled this sacrifice and interfered with this process. From the center of the chiasm, we move out one layer to the statement that Hophni and Phineas and their attendants committed a great sin. 1 Samuel 2:17. Therefore the sin of the young men was very great before the Lord, for men abhorred the offering of the Lord. Not only did Hophni and Phineas sin, but they also caused the people who brought the offerings to despise the offerings they were bringing. 17th century theologian Matthew Poole comments on how Hophni and Phineas caused the offerings of the Lord to be despised. Men abhorred the offering of the Lord. They neglected and abhorred the practice of carrying up sacrifices to be offered, which they knew would be so grossly abused, and which, as they might think, would be rejected and abhorred by God himself. And therefore they would not contribute to the priest's sin and the corruption of God's worship, but judged it better to neglect the thing than to expose it to the priest's deprivation, wherein yet they erred. The chiasm concludes by contrasting Samuel with the sons of Eli. 1 Samuel 2:18. But Samuel ministered before the Lord even as a child, wearing a linen ephod. Samuel wore the garment provided for him as a Levite, assisting the priests in their service to the Lord. Where Hophni and Phineas defiled their priestly garments, Samuel brought honor to his garments of service to the Lord. This verse not only completes the chiasm, but it is also the beginning of two parallel passages. The first passage is the blessing on Elkanah's house because of Samuel's faithful service and Elkanah's commitment to the Lord. 1 Samuel 2:19 and 20. Moreover, his mother used to make him a little robe and bring it to him year by year when she came up with her husband to offer the yearly sacrifice. Elkanah and his family continued their yearly pilgrimage to the house of the Lord at Shiloh. Each year Eli would bless Elkanah and Hannah for devoting the son that Hannah had asked for from Yahovah. Eli asked that God would bless them with more children. 1 Samuel 2:20. And Eli blessed Elkanah and his wife and said, Yahovah doth appoint for thee seed of this woman, for the petition which she asked for Yahovah, and they have gone to their place. Eli's blessing on Hannah was granted, and she went on to have 3 more sons and 2 daughters. The second of these 2 parallel passages is the curse on the house of Eli. By all accounts, Eli was a righteous man who loved God. However, his sons did not follow in his footsteps. Because of their sins, the house of Eli was cursed. 1 Samuel 2:22. Now Eli was very old, and he heard everything his sons did to all Israel, and how they lay with the women who assembled at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. While Samuel honorably wore the linen ephod and ministered before the Lord, Eli's sons committed whoredom. They lay with the women at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. They turned the house of God into a house of prostitution. This evokes the image of an earlier Phineas, the son of Eleazar, who was zealous for God's reputation, when a man of Israel lay with a woman of Midian at the door of the temple of meeting. That Phineas struck them both dead with a spear. In Numbers 25:12 and 13, God granted this Phineas, son of Eleazar, a perpetual covenant of peace to him and his descendants. Unfortunately, Eli did not react like this earlier Phineas. Eli did not defend the honor of God. He merely rebuked his sons for making the Lord's people transgress. However, Eli's sons did not listen to him. They continued to cause the people to sin. So God sent a prophet to Eli, who reminded Eli of how God chose the family of Aaron, of which he was a part, from all the tribes of Israel to minister before him. Because of the sins of Eli's sons, judgment would fall on Eli's house. 1 Samuel 2:31-33. Behold, the days are coming that I will cut off your arm and the arm of your father's house, so that there will not be an old man in your house. And you will see an enemy in my dwelling place, despite all the good which God does for Israel. And there shall not be an old man in your house forever, but any of your men whom I do not cut off from my altar shall consume your eyes and grieve your heart, and all the descendants of your house shall die in the flower of their age. God would cut off the strength and influence of Eli's house. The men would have short lives, but even more important, there would be an enemy in God's house. The sign that God gave Eli was that his two sons would both die on the same day. Although God would allow Eli's descendants to serve God, it would be in menial positions. They would not be allowed to come near to God to minister to him. God would purge his house, and then he would raise up a faithful priest who would serve him forever. 1 Samuel 2:35. Then I will raise up for myself a faithful priest who shall do according to what is in my heart and in my mind. I will build him a sure house, and he shall walk before my anointed forever. Hannah's prayer of praise to God prophesied about the coming of God's anointed king, his Messiah. Now included in this prophecy about the fall of Eli's house, there is the promise of a line of priests who will serve God's anointed king forever. This line of priests is revealed in the time of David as Zadok from the line of Phineas, son of Eleazar. In Ezekiel 44:15, God promises that they will minister before him during the millennial reign. The passage about the curse on Eli's house ends with a third repetition that Samuel ministered before the Lord. 1 Samuel 3:1. Then the boy Samuel ministered to the Lord before Eli, and the word of the Lord was rare in those days. There was no widespread revelation. Samuel stands in contrast to the sons of Eli. He is a part of the faithful remnant who continued to serve and worship the Lord in spite of the way the priesthood defiled the altar of God and led the people astray. Eli's sons Hophni and Phineas epitomize the characteristics of the sons of Belial that Moses warned against. They caused the people to follow different gods, and they abused God's commandment to love their neighbors. As a result, their house was cut off from ministering before God. Many sons of Belial would rise up throughout the history of Israel, including during the time of Yeshua. They are around today as well and will be active as the time of Yeshua's return approaches. I'm Brenda Cathcart for Moed Ministries International. Shalom and be blessed.